Hope everything is going wonderfully for everyone today. Post my live message. Perfect. And we're live. Happy Tuesday. Whew. I feel like so many things have happened since last Tuesday or since last stream. Yeah, all secrets. What do we got here? I gotta update my design doc for today. It is November. Hope everyone is enjoying their November so far. Oh my god, it's all coming together. All the stuff we did. Oh wow, that's right. Last week, the last couple of weeks, we've been focusing on some of the designs I'm in the middle of working on, talking about some of those things, and then having our traditional come up with new ideas brainstorm at the ends of the streams. Last week we were working on, was it only a week ago? It's crazy. The the Acapella game. Bring up one of my sheets here. 2020. We're into Adobe InDesign 2020 already. It's crazy. Yeah, so we're talking about different ways to position the words on the cards to come up with different phrases. And we had some interesting ideas about the orientation of the words. So when you held the cards in your hand, it would actually show up as the different phrases. I actually want to grab the prototype. Be right back. I won't say that this is quite a game, but I was pretty happy at least with how the components turned out. If they'll show up here on camera. Yeah, so as you can see, some of them, so the right side up orientation is with the 2 column at the top over here. Turning it upside down, you can see that there's some other columns of texts facing different directions. The idea is you'd be holding these cards in your hand and you'd be able to make phrases with some of the cards, some of the lists being right side up and some of them being upside down. So you could have the words closer together. I was pretty happy based on some of what y'all had said in the chat. Because my idea was to have first column be verbs, second be adjectives, and third be nouns, with the idea to make these chants that people would chant one after another or over each other. Actual mechanics are still a little bit fuzzy, but the idea being that you would quickly be able to line up these cards and look down the list and come up with some cool funny things like scooch good cars, scooch good cars, scooch good cars, or forge all cheese. Yeah, that's a little hard to see on camera if you squint a little bit, but forge all cheese. So with the 3 columns, you could just have 3 nonsense words in 3 different columns, then you wouldn't have to worry about this orientation thing. But as it is, you get a lot of content on just having, for a few cards, there's 6 words in each column. You can orient them with any of these cards being in the middle. So you have a lot of different combination. Fight melted hearts. Fight melted hearts. So my idea was to make a acapella chanting sort of a game with this. I was going to submit it very last minute for the Button Shy 18 card contest because was very excited about fitting so much content into such a small space, but couldn't quite figure out what the funnest thing to do with the cards mechanically. Just making the phrases is very fun and laughing about them and talking about them, but having a little bit of a game structure around there for winning, choices, why would you choose one phrase over another. Still a few things to figure out there, but my intention now with this is kind of just want to get a print and play out there and see what people do with it. I feel like that's been a little bit of my style with some of the things I'm working on. It's like, hey, this is cool. I'm not quite sure where it is yet. Throw it out into the world and see what happens, and then let it filter through my own brain for a little bit as well. But yeah, so that was cool because that came almost directly out of what we were working on stream last week. Had the components, everything came together. Again, didn't quite get it done in time for the contest. I wanted to have a little bit more there before I submitted a thing officially. I think we've been talking a lot recently about jams and about game jams specifically, not like fruit jams. So those are also delicious. Game jams, contests, what the purpose is for entering into them. I find them very motivational, and having constraints is really good and can be a really powerful way to get your creative juices flowing. But then the question becomes at a certain point, being a professional in this space, working on a bunch of different things, how much effort do I put into this contest as opposed to the things that I'm already working on? If something is not quite there, is it better to... Where's the line for that, I think it's a very interesting question when you're pitching things, when you're designing things, bringing something to a playtest night. When is it ready, I guess, to show to people? I did playtest this at the playtest night. I think if the structure with the rules I had for this was that one person would start chanting one of their phrases, and then the next person would start chanting their phrase while the first person was still chanting their own phrase. Everyone else would join in to the chant. It would kind of go around until everyone was trying to chant different phrases at the same time, and not mess up, basically. What came out of the playtest was, first of all, the first person was always chanting the same thing, so it wasn't as fun not being one of the people who got to change up their chants over time. And it was also a little tricky to tell if someone was messing up because there was so much chanting. It was kind of a self-reporting thing. And even if you forgot what you were saying, you just kind of be like, just mumble a little bit. So, created some interesting behavior, which is cool and I think very valuable when designing games. You're creating a new experience. It's definitely something I hadn't done before, chanting like this. But something I want to get out there into the public, have people play around with it, just let it percolate in the back of my brain for a little bit and see where that goes. So yeah, what am I working on now? I'm working on drinking my delicious tea. This is a special custom blend for my friend Cooper, who put out a record, or is an album that's going to be a record, which is super exciting. It's called Bull of Apis, Bull of Bronze. I don't even know. Offerings of Flesh and Gold, and their band name is Bull of Apis, Bull of Bronze. This is a whole new world for me, the black metal music. If you're into that sort of thing, I definitely suggest checking it out because it's very good for that kind of music from what I understand. Again, I don't know too much about the black metal world of music, but I've heard really good feedback for this one, and Cooper's actually getting a record for it, and there's a tea blend that comes with the record. If you're interested in a multi-sensual experience, then I think that's a very, very cool concept from a design perspective, to have a food or a beverage that goes along and adds to your creative experience. In fact, I'm going to write that down because I think that's cool. Having a food or that contributes to the sensual experience of your product. Yeah, now I'm thinking like, what am I working on today? Where am I with the projects? I mentioned for Acapella, basically need to take some time to make a slightly polished version of the print and play version of that and get that posted. Side dish, which we worked on a couple of weeks ago, submitted that to the jam. Kind of in limbo with that. I do want to get it tested up a little bit, do some polish on the recipes. I have some ideas for that, but not really a ton of design work at the moment, more in a playtest polished phase. Have been thinking about some more pitches because I have a few games that I'm actively working on at the moment. Games in progress. I have the space botany game we had talked about a little bit, and doing the tree structure for playing around with those cards. Split the loot, the card handing game. Also needs some tests with the area control tableau layout version of the game. So this is one, if you haven't heard me talk about it before, where you start off with some random cards in your hand. You're going to be passing two to each person beside you and keeping two. Over time, your tableau is going to be built up of cards that you've kept and cards that have been passed to you. You're going to introduce some cards to your tableau over time. At the end of each round, you shuffle everything back up. So it's got a little bit of a deck filtering, deck building component to it, but also really cares about what you're doing with your neighbors particularly, which I think is an interesting structure. The game currently works pretty smoothly. It functions, there's scoring, there's a winner to it, but it's not, with this mechanic, which is a little bit rarer of you're mostly just passing stuff to other people. There's not a ton of games that do that, but the question is, you know, what specifically about the passing and the neighbor mechanic is interesting. And just interesting / unique. You know, basically, why is it there? I've noticed with a lot of the designs that I'm working on lately, I'm calling this my sophomore design phase, as I have my first few games either published or under contract, and now that I'm starting to look at designing my next wave of games, a lot of the things I'm playing around with are kind of out there, you know. It's like, what can I do to be very creative for the next games that I'm putting out into the world? And sometimes, and from playing a lot of published games as well, I've been seeing this. It's like, why is this mechanic here? Why does it have to be this? You know, what if it was just more traditional? Deck builder, purchase from the market. Why are you passing cards to your neighbors? And that's a big question. A lot of people look at this game, and especially for being a newer designer, learning things in this space, people will ask, well, but why am I passing the cards? And, you know, my the answer I want to give is, well, that's just what the game does. You know, games do different things. Sometimes games have you draw cards. Sometimes games have you give cards to other people. Like, part of the magic circle is just doing weird things that games tell you to do. But that isn't always enough. You know, I think it's less often enough, especially when you start to try and push the boundaries a little bit about what's done before. Often a good enough answer is, this is what games do, if you're working within a defined familiar. I'm going to use the word familiar. So if you're making a deck builder or a bluffing game or a ladder game, then you can be like, oh, it's X type of game and that's why you do the thing. And if it's familiar enough to the players, they will accept that. They will feel more comfortable to them. But if there isn't that touchstone for, well, you're doing this, you know, just because, even if you put some light thematic theming, so back when it was Split the Loot, it's changed themes a few times. The idea was, oh, you know, you're trading things away, but it's not a real trade. It's not like you get to choose and be like, oh, I'll give you 3 diamonds for 1 ruby or whatever it is, because I didn't want to have that in the game. I wanted to capture an exchange feeling. Feeling of exchange without all the stressful, time-consuming trade trappings. The trappings of trading, right? Your classic, typical Settlers of Catan, where you have your sheep or your wood or whatever. You're like, I'll give you 3 sheep for 1 wood or whatever it is you need. And that can be a very tricky and stressful trade situation, trying to be in that. Often at higher levels of play, people playing Settlers of Catan won't trade because they know that whoever's offering the trade is going to do one that's better for them. And even if you get some of the stuff that you want, you know, it's probably not going to be like the absolute optimal situation. So I wanted to have the thing where people were exchanging stuff, limit it to the people next to you so it doesn't go too crazy, and limit it to, I can give away what I want, but I don't know exactly what I'm getting back. So I think there's a lot of interesting stuff there that makes sense from a game perspective. But for whatever reason, it's, even now that it's a combat, so you're building out your village, you're deciding which people to keep and which people to exile from your village, and for some reason it's not quite coming together. Like, people were doing the stuff, there were moments of fun in there, but as a full experience it hasn't quite gelled. And that's an interesting place to be. I use the word interesting. It's a potentially frustrating place to be as a game designer, having something that works, it's pretty much executing what you're trying to do, but the linchpin right there, the glue, the part where players are saying like, oh, I understand, like I'm doing this and this enables me to have these other things that happen. Yeah, so for this one, you have your tableau. Like, as I'm talking about this, especially for people who haven't seen the game before, it might help to draw things out a little bit. And then you have your fighters, or say like warriors. So you have your farmers, warriors, you have your walls. There's a little bit of set collection. You're just collecting these things. They have activated abilities. And at the end of each round, you get points depending on some set collection aspects. And also, so you play 3 hands, and that's the end of the round. Also at the round, your warriors will fight. And for the current iteration, if you have more armies than your neighbors, you get you steal points. Or if you have a bigger army, you've stacked up your characters. You also steal points from your neighbors. So a couple of the questions for this game, again, that keeps coming back to me, keeps kind of nibbling at the back of my brain. It's like, why am I exiling my villagers each turn? It's a little bit of a musical chairs vibe almost. It's like I can only keep 2 people, but then 2 people are always coming from the neighboring villages. So that's kind of a central question. The mechanical answer is like, because it's mechanically interesting. Really what I'm trying to get at with this game is you have 4 cards in your hand. You want to keep all of them for different reasons. So, for example, like, oh, well, if I do this one, I can get more armies and fight my neighbors, be a better fighter. If I do this one, it works with these other cards, and yeah, I might be a little weaker to being attacked by my neighbors, but I'll just generate a lot of points. So it doesn't really matter if they attack me because I will have built up a lot. And maybe this one, if I want to turtle down and defend myself, I won't necessarily be getting points from that because, you know, I'm defending, I'm not stealing or generating things, but I'm less likely to be attacked by my neighbors, or being attacked is not as bad of a thing. I think that's the feeling, the vibe that I'm trying to get there. Interesting choices in your hand, and often when there's many games, hand management games, where you're making interesting decisions about the cards in your hand. You know, let's talk a little bit about that, about the kinds of decisions you can make about cards in your hand. When will I play this card? Does timing, tempo matter? Do I have enough resources to play this card? Just played my version of Fantastic Factories today, which was a Kickstarter by a local designer. It's been in the works for a while. Finally got the game. Got the game a few weeks ago, but was able to play it for the first time today. And that's very much a hand management card, where these cards, they're multi-use cards, so I can use this as a resource, or I can keep it as a building, which will add towards my engine. So do I have enough resources to play this card? Someone going to steal this card. Some games, or Magic. You know, Magic is classic hand management. So I'm going to steal this card. Can I afford this card? Do I keep this card from round to round? So then that plays into the timing. Will I be able to play this card in the future? You know, which is the best card to play right now? So for your traditional hand management game, these are a lot of the questions that come up for Split the Loot. What I was trying to do is not just how will keeping this card help me, and how it's different from a traditional hand management thing. Oh, why were those so far out there? It's weird. Like, my bullet points are being weird right now. There we go. That's more normal. Yeah. How will keeping these cards help me? How will giving my opponents other cards help them less? So that's really the crux of it, is I want to keep the cards that will benefit me the most. I want to give my neighbors the cards that will benefit them the least. And there's potentially a lot of interesting math there. Like, this card helps me very little, or maybe doesn't help me at all, but it helps my neighbors a lot. And there is an element of the game where you're laying out the tableau so you can see what different people are working on. So like, wow, this is going to be really helpful for them. Like, maybe maybe I have a lot of walls. There's a catapult card that helps them get through walls. I don't want to give them that card. Maybe there could be some minor benefit to me, because I don't want... And in this weird structure, what's happened a lot is you're keeping too many cards just because they don't help you. You know, you're like, well, too many of these cards are good for my opponents. I don't want to keep them, but I kind of have to. Keeping too many cards that are too good for... So maybe a few times during the game you'll make a tricky decision where you're like, well, all of these 3 cards are good for me. This one card is really good for my opponent, so maybe I'll give them something that I do want to keep. I do want to keep this card, but this card is worse to give them. So I don't want too many turns where it's just like, oh, I can't give any of these cards. I feel bad. Every card I give away is too good. So there's a lot of potential interactions and layers and stuff going on there. This game has gone through a lot of iterations, gone through a lot of themes. It's one of those designs where I'm like, I don't know if I can crack this with the knowledge I have. You know, sometimes you just gotta wait around for an idea something to come out of the ether. Like, oh, wake up in the middle of the night, whatever. All of a sudden, I know how these pieces work together. I know the next direction I should go with this. This game, I've felt like, and many times I'm like, maybe this game isn't the right game for me to be working on right now. Maybe there's a better place to expend my efforts. Maybe I just don't know how to move forward with this yet. But then something shifts just a little bit. So right now I'm thinking more positionally. You know, maybe you have your walls. Again, that's like tableau, structure of cards in front of you matters. So you have your walls on a row, and you can put farmers in there to protect them. And maybe things inside walls can't be attacked unless you have a catapult, so there's a little back and forth there. But maybe if you have a warrior, they can't fight if they can't be hurt, but they also can't be fight if they're inside a wall. So your fighters need to be outside walls in order to attack. So that's something I'm thinking on that and letting that idea gel. And there's a lot of decisions in there. So I'm like, is this game going to get more complex than I want it to be? It's the interesting space that I'm in right now. The other weird thing about this game is you do shuffle all of the cards together. It's meant to be played a wide player count range. So 3 to 6 with potentially a 2-player version as well. Simultaneous, so it works. It goes fast. But you could get a completely weird part of the deck. Like you might not get any walls. You might get all rangers and berserkers and fighters. Or you might get all farmers and nothing to protect them with. And you have some control over tuning that, but you also have to deal with the weird portion of the deck that you're dealt. Right now you get random cards added to your deck. Maybe they should be chosen from a market. That was another thing, like trying to keep the game fairly simple, keep it accessible. You know, if you just put new cards in there, less choices people have to make, but does that mean that there's not enough interesting choices? So this is a game where there's definitely a lot of things to balance, a lot of back and forth with it. I'm also working with a potential publisher with a theme to the game, so there's some things that come along with that, and yeah, it's just been something percolating in the back of my brain that I've been going back and forth with a lot. Hello, video garver and game biologist. Yeah, I was ranting there for a second. Back here, back focused on chat. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me. Happy to have you all here. We have a tweet here. Ooh, food-themed games that are accompanied by a thematic recipe. Oh, that's fun. Anthology. A Harvest anthology of role-playing games, now accepting submissions through November 18th. Thank you, game biologist. That looks super cool. All right, passing cards, graft bribes. Offering for the gods. Altruism brings good karma. This, oh my gosh, game biologist. I love everything that's happening right now. It's such an interesting thing that happens with a game is, let's see, how many themes has this had? It's been split the loot, it's been treasure themed, dungeon or pirate themed. There was like Bowerbirds. This is the one I was working on that was potentially Bowerbirds themed. Their boy band made a lot of advancements when it was boy band themed. And now to this army battle version with exiling people. And is another interesting design question, right? Like, how many themes is too many themes? How many times should you re-theme your game before eventually you're like, maybe this mechanic isn't ready to be used in something. Maybe I should just back burner this and it will become part of a larger game, because I'm very fixated right now on making this mechanic, as I have envisioned it, become the central part of a game, having it be a simple card game. I love that once people get into it, it makes a lot of sense with, like, I'm keeping some cards, I'm giving some away. I know mostly which cards are good for me and which cards are bad for me. I also feel, sometimes I look at it and feel it's still so far, I don't know where it's going to go, and sometimes I look at it and think it's just almost there. Like, it could be to the point where the simplest of change will make everything click, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is perfect, this is a great game, this is just needs a little bit of polish and is ready to be published. Like, that is say as a designer, is a pretty frustrating place to be, but also an exciting place as well. Exchange and pass, White Elephant Yankee Swap. I actually really like that. Wow. Game biologists, you are on point once again with different themes. And that's the other thing too, for getting excited to work with an existing IP. I made a lot of changes to the game to make it work in this universe, and keep testing things. And we thought, like, me and the person I'm working with thought that it was going to be a very easy fix. That's another thing that can be tricky, is like setting up expectations. We're like, oh yeah, this makes so much sense. We'll just do this and game will be perfect. Game will be fine. I think it's progressed the game a lot, but it's also like hasn't gotten into, like, it's hard to say like, oh, the game is better. It's almost there. I can see a clear path forward for where it's going to be. I can see a couple of different directions that it's going into, but it's hard to tell yet which one. Could splinter in a few different games, which is also an exciting direction to go. Oh my gosh, game biology is so on point. Exchanging people and exiling passing cards. This sounds like a hybrid of a White Elephant trade and Tinder. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. That's like trading dates, like a date swapping game. That's like, sounds like there's interesting stuff to dig into there, but also could get very weird very quickly. Currently have a mat on for our HR. Gonna be a game about trying to pass off the misfits from your work team to someone else's to build the best team for workplace domination. I think that was one of the potential themes that was played around with as well. I think there's and that's the thing, part of what makes it tricky as well. Like the original theme, the treasure, taking pearls, swapping diamonds. I wanted it to be something very compelling where you could just be excited. Or Halloween candy was something I thought about as well. It's like you're passing the stuff you don't want and hoping to get better stuff back. But I love this, like, shuffling off, squirreling away vibe. Spiriting away. Makes me think a little bit about Office Space, right? Where they just kind of shove the guy off to the side. They're like, oh, just keep moving, passing people between teams. So you're just like, how about you just go over on this team and they could really use your help. It could be a couple of combinations of those things as well. Even for the combat one that we have going on, having a bribe element to it. And I think that's something that works thematically for the villagers style theme I have right now. So you're exiling people. You're like, these farmers just aren't pulling their weight right now. We're going to send them off to, or the neighboring city has defenses to protect against our rangers, so we're sending off the rangers in favor of some berserkers, for example. berserkers because they can't defend against that. I'm just thinking out loud here, but there's a weird double think of, okay, so we gave them the rangers, now we can't defend against that. So I want, like, I don't want to have too many different layers of things that we're thinking about, because you have the opportunity for analysis paralysis there, right? Where you get to the point where you're like, okay, well, I can't use this ranger. Maybe I can use the ranger to attack the other side neighbor. But then with these fighters, I can't use them over here, so I can give the fighters away, but if they turn them right back around on me, it's going to be a few turns before they get shuffled back through the deck. But it's something I'll have to worry about in the future. And with the game as it's set up, you don't have a ton of control about what you're pulling into your deck. This is funny, talking about Split the Loot. I'm like, I was just going to touch on Split the Loot briefly, but thanks, y'all. Your feedback here is actually being helpful. And it's one of those games where I've had a lot of different ideas floating around in my head of things I can potentially do, but haven't sat down to really codify the different pieces to it. And sometimes with game design, like with any creative project, you're going to be sitting there and you're like, oh, I know pretty much what I have to do to move this forward, and you're not moving it forward, and you're not moving it forward. And sometimes you have to figure out what the blocker is there with game design. Different people have different challenges with game design. Sometimes you just literally don't have the time to sit down and do it. Sometimes you're unsure of how you want to move forward or which project you want to work with. Sometimes you've just had a struggle with a game, or you had some particularly harsh feedback, or, you know, it kind of feels like it's falling apart. So there's different categories of blockers. You have I don't want to say like the real world, the moving around, the resources, I guess I would say. Resource blockers or time, money to be able to invest in different things, having playtesters as a resource. So those are all external things. So I still want to talk about this, but sidebar. Oh gosh, I keep doing that thing. Internal versus external blockers for moving forward with game designs. Start with external, internal, external time, money, playtesters, and then internal can be things like uncertainty, goals not clearly laid out, goals not broken down. So if you look at a game, you're trying to develop something, you're excited about an idea, but you just feel stuck on it, just looking at it and say, oh, I just need to fix this game. Like, what am I going to do with my 3 hours that I have to work on things tonight? I'm going to look at this game, I'm going to fix it. That's a really big ask and very complex and often has many steps. So if you can break that down, if you're feeling stuck with stuff, which I have been feeling stuck with Split the Loot. So try positioning, change up separate bullet point, break it down to very small steps, change up roles so they work with positioning. I think a quick brainstorm on different themes, because working with themes, like having the boy band theme, definitely was helpful to move some of those stuckness points. So some great themes right here that make a lot of sense. Try it with a market you can choose from, instead of being dealt random cards. That's a pretty simple change too, of just positioning where the cards when you get to select them. There was a market phase in the past. I removed it because this interesting choice was what I want to focus on. But I think that change now with the current version of it, looking back at it, might have gone too far in the other direction, with now you don't have any control over what you're doing. So bring back the market. Change up the positioning. I would say even simplify some of the cards, change up the roles. Because a lot of them now, it's like you get a bunch of points if you have this, and scoring the game is another thing that was a little bit tricky. The actions were pretty fast and fun, but we spent almost as much time scoring each round as doing the actions, which was not super fun. So walls. Block one army on this side. And something like a catapult. Flip a neighbor's wall in this row. And I was thinking rows too. You could have a certain number of things in between rows. You could just have one big row, but if a wall is knocked down, like maybe there's a bit bigger consequence. Flip neighbors, or you have to do a certain number of rows, or a lot of stuff to play around with when you start talking about positionality. Face down, because we have the mechanic of face down cards not doing anything. And right now the different types of armies, it's a set collection thing, so it doesn't do anything in particular. We could play around with it too, so like Rangers, ignore one wall in this row. And then different ways of categorizing the different cards. Cool. Game Out says, sounds a little like Population 436. Ooh. Is this a show? Is this a movie? A census taker visits Rockwell Falls. To learn why his population has remained at exactly 436 for over 100 years. He eventually learns that no one is ever allowed to leave, and the town citizens will do whatever it takes to maintain the status quo. He must attempt to fit in while he plots his escape. Wow, so if he's living there, did they like kill someone off so that he could move there? That's oh my gosh. That looks like pulpy and fun. Cool. So that's our split the loot stuff. Space botany, I feel like that's one I just have to lay out on the table and mess around with that. The chores game that we came up with last week, you have the chores, they come out over time, flip over to be a laundry monster or whatever if they're not dealt with quickly enough. There's a lot of fun stuff there. I might even be able to just go ahead and prototype that one. So I think right now I'm actually, alright, we have Space Botany game, Split the Loot, the Merge game, Have You Had Enough Cheese, kind of weird, pervasive game experiences. Okay, that I was going to send out. That would be a print and play. Theme ideas. What other stuff am I working on? Oh man. I keep looking at my list of old games of the things that I want to work on. It's like, oh, what am I doing with that? Sofas for sale. Truth of Science. The comeuppance we were working on here with like a politics game. I should dig that up and be able to see where that's at the moment. Comeuppance balancing game. Yeah. I think really what I want to work on right now is just some brainstorm and ideation. Usually we start our brainstorming or trying to think of a particular game, but I want to come up with like a few different ideas. Oh shoot. There was that one we were talking about. Did I write that down? Chore game. Gourd growing game. Ooh, we're talking about the different, like back when we were having ideas about pumpkins and growing out the different vines for new pumpkin species, and you're infesting other people with bugs and things. Species claiming and naming game. That was another one we talked about on stream a while back. We were talking about potentially fossil games or scientific naming of things. Where you would go to locations. Are you trying to be the first to get dibs on naming newly discovered species, even if you didn't necessarily deserve it. This whole thing is like, I licked it, so it's mine. Board rock. What was this one? That was one that we talked about at some point too. You just do a symbol and it's just rocks. All this like rock, paper, scissors, but it's just rocks all the way down. Card game. Incredibly complex Euro. Hex minigame. Alright, yeah, so let's do some brainstorming. I have some constraints for the brainstorm. Brainstorm. Very similar to brainstorm. Brainstorm. Alright, so we're gonna come up with some new game design ideas. Party games, family games, card games, mass-ish. So as I'm getting more into my sophomore development phase, I'm starting to think about what I want to focus on. I want to make as many different kinds of games as possible. I love the idea of making a more complex game. A lot of the games I've made are pretty simple systems, so complex with interlocking systems. More weird indie games, like the Wilting Flowers game I talked about at one point. Pervasive games, experiential games, boundary pushing games. But I'm also very excited in making games that that people can connect with pretty easily. And just things that more people can pick up and dive right into. And I think especially, it's a very interesting dichotomy of where designers are at and the kinds of things that people are making right now. So if you listen to our most recent interview on Ludology with Kim Vandenbroek, she comes from the mass market side and makes a lot of what she calls toys with rules. One of the most recent ones she was nominated for an award for was the Peeing Pup. It's like a hot potato with a plastic dog, shoots out water at a certain point. Super cute, super fun. So there's people on the mass side doing that kind of stuff. And there's people on the hobby side. A lot of the designers I talk to are working on a lot of more complex designs. And a lot of the publishers I'm talking to recently are looking for more party, for mass market, but not quite monopoly type of things. So I think there's a lot of design space in there and a lot of interest in that space right now. So yeah, that's what we're going to do for our brainstorm now. Like, how do I want to do this brainstorming? Do a seed word or just start going from that? For those very constraints, but broad constraints, like party games that are for a mass market. T, I like to just look around myself for brainstorm ideas. Maybe we just do a bunch of really quick brainstorms, quick mind maps. That could be fun. Tea, flavor, food games. I feel like a lot of pressure is on this moment. It's like whatever happens now could be the seeds of like some really exciting games. Daylight savings time just happened. Darkness, I'm like looking at my window, it's like it's a lot darker than it used to be. Dusk, sunset. How about sunset? You can see a little bit of the rosiness outside my window here. Cool, so we're gonna do brainstorms. Our goal is to come up with a lot of potential ideas. So we have a lot of the different things that we can work from. I wanted to add to my list the red light, green light one, because that was a brainstorm that we had a lot of fun doing. I remember seeing a game out there that was similar. There was called Red Light, Green Light, but I think there's still some space. Children's playground games. Tag and that kind of thing. Alright, that can be another brainstorm. Let's start from here and see what we come up with. Email just says, I was recently reading about a scientist who's named a bunch of species using punny names, but he's had to publish the papers naming the species in non-English journals. They don't flag and reject the pun names. Oh my gosh. Yeah, like the, what was the one that we were coming up with? The Woodland Beeper. Mash up the board game with the squash rocket I saw on vacation last week. Build the most aerodynamic squash and then fling it with a mini slingshot to try to hit a target on the game board. Ooh, I like that. Squash rocket. Squash rocket is a good name for a game too. Right, so you're genetically manipulating boards to be aerodynamic during growth. So they fly better when you shoot them in a slingshot. Makes me think of Punkin' Chunkin', right? I was in the South for a while, so that was definitely a thing. Punkin' Chunkin' have like a trebuchet, basically, for pumpkins. Very exciting. Kind of dangerous. Not very aerodynamic. They just get a lot of force behind those things. Squash Rocket's also a great name for the stream today. I like that. Squash Rocket. Alright. I like this. I'm going to make an audible right here. I'll probably come back to that brainstorm. But now I have childhood games. playground games, we'll say. Even though they're not always played on a playground. As our inspiration. We have wolves and sheep, shark and minnows, those kind of games where you have two, kind of, it's 1v1, a many group that eventually transitions to the other side. So you have one it person and they tag a person and they're part of the it team. It's like you're the wolves, you start with one wolf and you're tagging people, and over time you get more and more people tagged and you're running back and forth down the field. I'm like, there's an important part of this. Team-based, which is cool. You know, there aren't that many team-based games, especially if you can play it with asymmetrical teams. Would be cool. Asym teams. One versus many. Alright, I'm just gonna be like chunking out these game ideas. Wolves versus sheep, shark versus minnows, teams versus many. So you're running back and forth across a field. Get tagged, you go to the other side. One side is trying to collect everyone. I'm trying to remember what the actual, if there was a win condition to that, because it didn't really matter. Like, I knew that I wanted to be the last person tagged, but I don't know if, I think eventually everyone gets tagged. Left is the winner, but that also means that the wolves can never win, so win condition, have to play around with that a little bit, but if it were to be a card-based game, I could imagine face down, cards, and then you have your one. So sheep or blank cards, potentially. Then you have your wolf play down their card afterwards. And maybe they just start with one, start with a couple, and then all of these are revealed. And you're trying to see if you blocked sheep. If you block sheep, you get another wolf card. Yeah, great. Can be a simple face down bluffing game. Sheep laid down their cards. Some are sheep, some are blanks. Wolf lays down their card. They got a sheep. That sheep comes to their side. If all sheep got through a certain number of times, or if a certain number of sheep get through, sheep win. And maybe wolf wins by getting all sheep. Great. It's an idea. Game idea. Game Audio says, thinking back to my childhood where the rule was you could play outside with your friends but had to be home before sundown. Ooh, yes, I love connecting the two. have to come home before sundown. Pack as much fun as you can into daylight hours and race to be home by dark. I like that too. Idea 2. Be home before dark. And this goes in with the chores game idea that we were talking about as well. We were trying to have as much fun as you can before you're kind of punished for letting it go too. So a little bit of brinkmanship, which I really like in games. Squeeze in as much fun as possible before you have to go home. Brinkmanship. You probably have, I like the idea of a timer here. The timer being colored cards with numbers and patterns for color blindness, of course. So sun is here, sun is here, sun is here, sun is here, and then darkness. You can see this being a very pretty game. Just the timer element of it I like. Have sun setting cards as a timer, pretty sundown cards. When it gets dark, if you're not home, you lose or lose a lot of points. So maybe if you get like that one really good point scoring thing, it'd be worth it, even though you're gonna get in trouble. Not a perfect timer. Not sure exactly how many hours, minutes, I guess. Does push your luck. It also reminds me of oh my gosh, what is that one game called? Submarine Oink Game. Deep Sea Adventure. There could also be a distance element. Distance element where the better fun is farther away, takes longer to get back. The night card is shuffled into the last few dusk cards. So you're not sure exactly when night falls, something along those lines. Squash Rocket in action. Definitely have to check that out. Most fun games are the ones you made up. Lots of weird play action cards. Hop on one foot, spin in a circle, yell player's name, chant, drag a rope, throw a stick, and players have to build a hand for a game. They actually demo. Posting too many things, can't get through it. It's gold. Playground, yeah. Idea number 3. We're just churning these out. Just call it playground games. You have a bunch of cards with silly things you can do, things you find in the forest or on the playground. Oh my gosh, that ball, the big red rubber ball. Man, I just remember at a certain point that there would be, I don't remember if these are my memories or from watching Recess a lot, the cartoon as a kid. But like there would only be a certain number of balls and you would have to get there in time to get the nice, good, bouncy ones? And would you be able to find to play your game? Maybe student cards come out and they have certain types of games they want to play. I want to play with a stick. So it's a little bit of recipe fulfillment. Trying to get the game that works with the most people. Collect the most people. Something like you get a parachute. Oh my gosh, the parachute game. I don't know what it was about going under that parachute. Maybe it was the collaborative nature that everyone was involved, but it was just like when they brought out the parachute, I was like, this is the best day ever. And everyone loves it. We would also we did this a couple of times where we would set up obstacles all over the gym, like literally drag out every single piece of foam, the dividers, the mats for gymnastics. We would like litter the huge gym with all these things, and we would play a crazy hide and go seek running game and turn off the lights in the gym, and that was the best thing ever. Something must have happened, like I don't know, kids must have been making out or something, because we only did that a few times, but it's one of my most cherished memories. In goal vibe is the creativity, being a kid, and the fun games you could invent. So playground games, invention. And a lot of the things we would come up with, you know, it's like we were playing superheroes and these were our powers, and it was basically tag matched up with the floor is lava, matched up with hide and seek, making these Uber games. Fong Odin, I'm late to the party. Stupid work. No worries. Great to see you here. I've been very focused here. I'm sure you've been here for a few minutes. Thanks so much for joining us. The rule for me was when the street lights came on. Ooh, I like that. Because that could be, I like the sunset element. It's very artistic. But this could maybe work as a better timer. Like you could have a number of streetlights. Or maybe there's a luminant. Maybe we could do both of them. There's a period of held breath is what I'm feeling. So sunsets. The gray of dusk. Is it dusk yet? And then it's like bam, bam, bam. You don't know how many darkness cards will come out. And then streetlights. And then it's over. Finito. You must be home before dark. Fully co-op game where the whole group needs to get a major fun time score and get all their homes in time. Alright, idea 2, be home before dark, competitive version. Idea 2.5 is a cooperative version. I like that. Maybe you have some hidden information, like cards in your hand of goals to satisfy, or else you have a majorly unfun time. So you might be pushing. It's like, oh no, I really need to play baseball before it gets dark. Press your luck, yeah, absolutely. Lose points if the crabby neighbor yells at you for being rowdy kids and calls your parents. Kids playing games. All sorts of stuff here. I'm gonna make this another idea. Idea 4. Don't wake the neighbors. Trying to have much fun. Without getting in trouble. Major touch point for this, obviously, is the Sandlot. Go into their yards, hit baseball into yard, noise complaints. Ooh, I love the idea of rolling a dice. Ooh. Sibling cover. I like that as a power card that you could potentially use to buy yourself a little bit of extra time. Alright, don't wake the neighbors. Rolling a dice to see if a baseball ends up not in their yard, in their yard, or crit fail in their window. Game over. But not really. Balancing the amount of fun, say maximizing. How much fun you have while not getting in too much trouble. I like this as a cooperative game. There's an annoyance meter. If it gets too high, you lose the game. This question, would a baseball through the window be an auto lose? Maybe you can blame the baseball window thing on another group of kids. Yeah, again, actually, now more I think is you do a competitive and a cooperative. So don't wake the neighbors. It's not really waking, like that's not a great title, but that's the first thing that comes to my head. Yeah, 4.5, 4.45, we're getting very granular here. Cooperative. So for the competitive version, you're trying to blame it on rival gangs of kids. Blame the annoyances on rival gangs of kids, so their annoyance meters go up. Perfection style clicking timer, so you feel the pressure running out. Ooh, I like that, yeah. Yeah, again, we're thinking, like, the stuff I'm trying to think up here is potentially, is mass market. Maybe it has a timer or some more traditional game elements to it. Playing popcorn with a parachute. Balls flying everywhere. Kids dodging out of the way. So awesome. Yeah. Oh, man. It's fantastic how evocative these memories can be. Just speaking about that, right? Let's keep going. Let's more ideas. Ideas for days. All kids game. Parachute. Because we're talking about how the parachute is the best thing ever. Parachute games. It makes me wonder who came up with the idea of using parachutes for kids to play with. Does that go back to when parachutes were invented and multiple people would fold them together? Seems like a Wikipedia thing. Why do kids play with parachutes? The history of parachutes. That could be an interesting thing. Could you do like a mini actual parachute in the game? That would be cool. Types of parachute games. Or just bring full-size parachute games back, right? It's like, why can't we have that as adults? Alright, I'm gonna write a note here. Don't pay attention to it because this is a future thing that's in my head. Just want to get it down. My brain is bopping around all sorts of different things. Maybe instead of a real parachute game, trying to pick the parachute game to play and everyone has their favorites. Benefits of parachute play. Playparachutes.com. Do they have the history about that though? Rainbow parachutes, about parachutes, benefits. History of parachute games. Alright, back to this other thing that I just wrote down here, babysitting. I feel like there aren't a ton of babysitting is such an interesting thing. I haven't, as someone who does not currently have kids, I have friends who have kids, but I don't know, something about maybe it's city living or just the ways what we usually do when we connect is I don't spend a lot of time around kids, around parents talking about their kids. So babysitting hasn't really come up, but from what I've heard is it's not as much of a thing. Because I remember being a kid and we would have babysitters come over and it was a pretty common thing. It was usually teenagers who did that, but for whatever reason, it doesn't seem to be as much of a thing anymore. So maybe this idea wouldn't even work if babysitting isn't as common of a practice. I think families still do it. Parents trade off. Like if you were a parent with kids, you might have your kids come over. Is babysitting still a thing? Oh, history of babysitting in America to modern babysitting. Cool. Babysitter game on Board Game Geek. Oh my gosh, 1966. Wow, that's so old. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. 60-minute playing time. Wow. Cool. Playground parachute. Wikipedia article. Doesn't seem to have a history. List of parachute games. Man. I need somebody to do a research project about that now, because it's like, what is the history of parachute games? Game Knowledge, I've never seen Sandlot. What? How though? It's like, what? That's crazy. I've had neighbors give us warning shot when our pack of friends took a short cross across their property. That's sort of the same, right? A warning shot, like from a shotgun? I don't know if that's the same, maybe? It's probably an army surplus thing after World War II or the Vietnam War. Cheap stuff for schools to get their hands on, and teachers are very creative people. Gotta do a tire swing velocity versus sickness, or a time versus sickness type of a situation. Don't vomit on the tire swing. You know, it's an interesting thing, because I feel swinging used to be the best thing ever, and I've gone back and done swings. I'm like, I don't understand why this was so enjoyable. Now it's very scary. I remember as a kid just loving it, but now doing it as an adult is much... as a kid, I think there's a... there's a term for it, for enjoying that feeling. I think it might be similar to like a roller coaster, physical actuation sort of a feeling. Swinging into a lake or pond. Angular momentum thing. It's the spinning that does you in. Yeah, if you get the swing going just the right / wrong direction, you're gonna have a bad time. Babysitting could have common and juxtaposed goals. I feel like it could. Oh man, it's like the Babysitters movie, right? Like someone dies in that movie. How do you make it interesting, fun without going too dark? One versus many. Keep things calm. Kids. A lot of these are kids having fun while other people are trying to make them not have fun, which is interesting. Try to cause chaos that gets blamed. Keep things calm. Escape unscathed. Man. Also, I did try doing babysitting. It must be kind of still a thing, because I tried doing it 5 or 6 years ago when I lived in New York City. I was covering for my roommate, and it was scary. Kids are scary. Just like, oh my, kids are scary. Keeping... Kids are scary. Just because you're like keeping them alive, but they don't realize that. Like, you're just trying, like, just please don't jump off the sofa or drink toilet water or whatever it is that you're thinking about doing. Don't choke on anything. Like, you're so terrified of just maintaining these small humans as the babysitter. And then just their physical well-being and their emotional well-being. It's like, there's just so much stuff going on. The moment when someone says the date 3 years before you were born is so old. I used to love swinging, and then jumping off at the peak of the swing. 49-year-old joints are all about not launching at speed when 10 feet in the air. The swinging is still fun. All right. This goes into our tire swinging. Maybe I should try going back to it. It's like, it's been a while. Playgrounds. Man. Yeah, it's so... they're the best thing in the world as a kid. Like, I'm trying to think, like, I love this idea of juxtaposition and, you know, different age groups and how things change as you get older. Because I remember, I was a kid for a long time. I remember even, you know, kids' playgrounds, 5 years old, 6, 7 years old. But I remember being, even up into a teenager, just loving the physicality of hiding and climbing and digging. And it, like, you don't realize when that point is, when it's no longer fun. Like, this isn't even game territory anymore. It's like, we gotta get back to having fun. Now it's just like, oh, it's not even that fun anymore. Like, that's just kind of sad. What is the existentialness of it? What is that point at which it's just not fun anymore? And it's not even a conscious thing. Like, there is a part where you're like, oh, I'm not going to play games anymore. Like, that's for kids. Like, that's a little bit of a conscious psychological thing. But there's more of the subconscious, like, subconscious point where you remember what it was like. Like, I still have those play memories where, like, you hide, you dash, you jump, and you just feel, it's all just so fun. There's a state of flow to it. And at a certain point, it's just that I think flow starts to get a little harder to achieve. Because you're more in your head. So yeah, can we recapture, this is not a big goal at all, recapture the fun flow of playground play. Lidor, how about trading in a Mediterranean restaurant? Ooh, yeah. It's like trading in the Mediterranean, but in a Mediterranean restaurant. I don't know if that's necessarily for the split the loot or just in general, but I'm gonna put it here. Trading in the, it's funny because it's like a thing, right? The trading in the Mediterranean. Oh, this is great. Trading options for, it could be a tapas thing too. Spanish, like a Spanish version. Trading options for all the different meze. You're going to get, trying to make sure your favorite dishes get picked. Avoid dishes you don't like. How about just riff on the Hollywood babysitting adventures trope? Yeah, Adventures in Babysitting. That was the movie that I was talking about. Lots of wacky things happen. You have great adventures. You got to keep the kids safe. Yeah, I like that a little bit more, I think, than the kids versus babysitter. Yeah, I like the Adventures in Babysitting. Oh man, now I just want to watch that movie again. Idea 6.5. Have grand adventures. Keep the kids safe. I think this is a cooperative one. This one would probably be a competitive one. Don't let parents find out. Actually, Adventures in Babysitting could be a fun IP for a game. Go on adventures around the city, because I feel like what happens is you're trying to like a Ferris Bueller thing where you might keep running into them. Bueller? Sure, that sounds... how do you spell Bueller? Yeah, I just mixed up the letters there. Perfect. Location, dashing game. Could also be spy themed. Makes me think of Fugitive. So maybe like Adventures in Babysitting, Ferris Bueller's instead of being like a non-spy themed version of Fugitive, trying not to get caught. And there's like it's interesting. It's a little different because you're trying not to get caught, even though they're not actively tracking you, which is interesting. So cooperative instead of 1v1. All right, keep them coming. Come with all sorts of great ideas here. Fong Odin says, one of the things I loved about babysitting was I got to focus on the kids, so we both wanted to have fun, but the fun had to be safe-ish. In my memories too, you know, it wasn't as much kids. Like, I really, like, having a babysitter over was just one of the highlights, like some of the best memories of my childhood. Because we would, you know, parents are busy and they're working and they're cleaning up the house and cooking. So you don't always do a lot of active play with your parents. But when you have a babysitter over, like you said, a lot of times they'll be more focused on just playing and having a fun time and everyone enjoying themselves. It's like when I hang out with kids nowadays, when I hang out with other people's kids, it's funny because they always joke about it. They're like, man, our kid really likes you for some reason. I'm like, yeah, because, you know, I'm fun. I like to talk to them about their interests, play board games together. Could still be an asymmetric game with almost like a GM. Kids have fun, stay safe. Individual kids. Have most fun. Parents. Catch everyone being naughty. Fong Odin, you spend so much time as a kid doing what other people tell you to. That flow you talked about for me was freedom. Yeah, that is very poetic. I agree about that. I think it's something we don't necessarily think about as adults, just how good we have it for being able to choose, you know, something you think about, oh, I gotta do work, I gotta do this, but what I want for breakfast, when I have to clean the toilets, you know, what I want to do on the weekends, we have a lot of choice as adults. Adults versus non. In case you are just joining us, we're doing a bunch of brainstorms. We're coming up with a lot of potential themes and ideas for games that could work for party games, family games, leaning more towards the mass market side than a strictly hobby side. Shoot, what was I? yeah, I was thinking about being a kid versus being an adult. Not trading places. 13 going on 30. Big kid in an adult body, or vice versa. So it could almost be a role-playing thing. Each player is their adult self as a kid, or kid self as an adult. Maybe time travel, going back and forth between being a kid and adult, trying to set things up as an adult for fun as a kid, etc. Lighter, there needs to be a fry boat and spices for the Mediterranean game. Oh my gosh, I love it. Now I'm hungry. Made me hungry. Oops. Up here. Oh my gosh, spices. So many spices. Just a bajillion more food games. Like I saw that game of cooking and spices when I was at Shucks with the amazing frying pan things. I want to do like a spice it up. Ooh, you have a million spices in your hand. And how they combine. Freaky Friday. Yeah, Freaky Friday, exactly. Okay, I think we did pretty well there. That was about 40 minutes, 45 minutes, and we came up with the start of 11 ideas, so that's pretty good. Yeah, and this brainstorming is great. I know a lot of people out there have a million games already they want to work on, but sometimes just coming up with brainstorm is fun. This was super fun. I hope you had fun as well. I really enjoy the brainstorming aspect of things. But it can also help to any other game that you're working on. Even doing a brainstorm, if you don't need new ideas, can be a very freeing and fun and useful thing to do. If you see anything that inspires your own ideas here, feel free to run with that. If two people started from the same kernel of an idea and moved forward, they would end up with two completely different designs. So I love that as a way. And I would love to compare, you know, like 5 years from now, I'm like, this is my game. And someone's like, this is my game. Oh my gosh, these both came out of the babysitting idea. How cool is that? So yeah, I think that's about all the time we have today. Phil may or may not be gearing up for his D&D session, so gonna have to cut it off about here. Thanks as always for joining me. I hope you had fun and enjoyed yourself. I always have a blast doing these streams. I feel like I learn a lot. I hope that you learn stuff as well. Feel free to either hit me up on chat here or on Emma Larkins, at Emma Larkins on Twitter. If you have any suggestions for the show, any questions, anything that you're dying to learn more about, or feedback, I always like to hear if this is useful, if you'd like to see the show go in a different direction. I'm here for you as much as you are here for me. For my part, I'm going to keep looking at these ideas, keep moving forward. My goal is to have a bunch more stuff to pitch around PAX time. It's still about a month away, but it's going to feel like it's coming up super fast, especially having some of these ideas ready to go at that time. So yeah, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. I'm here every Tuesday, 4 p.m. PST, streaming board game design. Also do streams on Thursdays, casual Magic the Gathering usually, or actually playing games if you like that as well. If you like the show, you can follow right here on the side. You can also subscribe because I'm an affiliate. Woohoo! Yeah. hope to see you all again soon. Bye. See you around the table.